And this morning from Tucson, Arizona, Shara Turner joins us. A conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, voted the best personal injury law firm in the Best of Indiana County contest. Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Shara is an addiction expert and the clinical director for Sabino Recovery. And she joins us on the eve of a New Year's weekend, which is, it's a dicey time of the year. So let's talk to her about that. Shara, good morning.
Good morning to you.
It's good to have you with us here today.
Thank you.
This is when we read about statistics and how they can inform us when we make our decisions. This is a weekend that's made for that. Over half of car crash victims had drugs or alcohol in their systems, and it's not getting any easier, is it, Shara?
No, it's not getting any easier. And, unfortunately, as I say, once you've driven that car to the bar, to the party, to the restaurant, wherever you're going, it's very likely, no matter how much you've had to drink, that you're going to drive that car home, because the impact that alcohol has on the brain inhibits our ability to judge, make good judgments. It loosens our empathy, our impulse control goes down. So, my best advice is not even to drive anywhere on a weekend like this.
Yeah, well, you're right. And knowing numbers like that and knowing good advice like that, it's amazing to me the number of people that just let it blow by and they do it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think people, it's the whole idea you never think it's going to happen to you, right? Mm-hmm. Or you think you're kind of above it all. Maybe you've been doing it for years and gotten away with it, but it takes that one time. And, the worst case scenario is someone gets terribly hurt or killed. But even just someone getting a DUI, the financial and emotional burden of that on an individual is astronomical these days.
Yeah, absolutely is. And I said it's getting harder and harder these days. It's not getting any easier to combat it, particularly when it comes to the use of drugs that are so much more difficult to detect. You can't just do it with the basic breathalyzer, can you?
No, you can't. So they do have tests that they can run. Let's take, for example, marijuana can stay in your system for up to 30 days. So someone could test positive and they could be at a low level. You'd have to get that sent out to a lab to be able to test any levels. So it's more difficult. And there's some synthetic drugs on the market that aren't even detectable in the system or through a drug test.
All right, so we need to find solutions to this very bad problem, especially on what sometimes is known as Amateurs Weekend here for New Year's, with New Year's Eve falling on a Saturday night. That's really, really difficult. And so many people who are not used to drinking or certainly to taking drugs, they're going to be out there this weekend. Yeah. And we need to find ways to protect everybody, them included.
Right, exactly. And I would say anybody, just don't drive. Obviously that's a great way to protect yourself. Just be very careful, in your environment. And if you have someone in your life, or you maybe even yourself are feeling like this is getting out of control, there's so many people out there that can help before it gets out of hand with drug and alcohol abuse.
Yeah, you're right about that. So let's talk of what happens physically, chemically to the body when you become addicted to alcohol or to drugs.
Well, so let's just take out, this could be a whole conversation, it could go on forever, but take alcohol, for example. It raises dopamine in the body, which kind of creates a euphoric feeling. So you become addicted to that high, and then when you're not drinking, it lowers your levels of dopamine, among many other neurotransmitters. So over time, you need that drug to survive, right? Addiction becomes survival. Not only that, where I work at Sabino Recovery, we're really focused on the trauma. A lot of times people start drinking or using drugs to numb some underlying, unprocessed trauma from their past. COVID in of itself was really traumatic to this whole country. But things of that nature, people will find ways to numb that. And the quickest way they can find possible. And the more they do it, the more habitual it becomes.
How difficult is it? And I'm sure there's a great difference in eliminating drug use and combating drug addiction as opposed to alcohol addiction. But how difficult physically is it to get alcohol to the point where it's no longer where you could say, I'm addicted to it? Or can it even be done?
Oh, that's kind of a hard question. Everybody's so different. But I will say this, and I don't know if people realize this, alcohol is the one drug that if you detox from too quickly, it can kill you. It's the only drug that, well, alcohol and benzodiazepines, but that can kill you in the detox process. So, opiates, meth, those other drugs, you may feel like you're going to die, but you can actually die coming off of alcohol if you've been drinking a lot for years and years.
Wow, that's scary.
It is scary, yeah. So again, reach for help. There's lots of resources out there.
The decision to get behind the wheel of a car, and you said this earlier, is one that you make actually before you even put on your best clothes and go out for your New Year's Eve excursion or whatever the excursion might be, your football weekend, whatever it happens to be. That decision, you make that before you take that first drink, don't you?
Absolutely. Actually, you make it before you even go out for the day. You have a plan in front of you. Hopefully you've got some good friends around you that talk sense into you, but you've got a plan before you walk out that door.
And obviously we wish that plan included somebody driving for you.
Yes.
So tell me about Sabino Recovery. What do you do?
So Sabino Recovery we're a trauma facility. We treat drugs and alcohol abuse. We also treat mental health. So we're dually licensed diagnosis center. But we really look at everything through a trauma lens. It's never about what's wrong with you. It's always about what happened to you. And what happened to you that dysregulated your nervous system so severely that you find the need to use drugs and alcohol or other, there's a lot of other maladaptive coping, right? Gambling, sex, shopping. But whatever you're doing that's inhibiting your ability to face your own stuff. And, it's getting in between relationships, creating havoc at work. That's kind of one of the signs of addiction. Is it creating issues in relationships and work? And have you tried to stop and you can't? If you answer yes to those two, that's probably something the person needs to look at.
When it comes to alcohol, and you can also do this with drugs, but is the problem rooted in behaviors when you were young, for the most part, or does it sometimes, or maybe more often, come when you're in your mid-20s, early 30s?
Yeah, I wish there was a good answer to that. I think it's so different for every person. I once had a client come to me and say, hey, had a great childhood, I just drink too much. Come to find out he was horribly bullied in the 5th grade. Kids that are bullied develop this narrative that they're not good enough, and they'll take that narrative with them into adulthood. And the first time they have a drink and that quiets that narrative, they're like, oh, wow, this works. And again, it becomes survival, right? In the beginning, we don't realize what we're doing is harmful, but over time, it starts to become so habitual, we lose sense of ourselves. So I don't know that there's one answer to your question, and I really think it's so individualized per person.
Mm-hmm. As we get to the month of January and people think about New Year's resolutions, and a bunch of people make them, and we know that. In fact, I had this survey here that said that over half of us who do drink are wishing for what they call a dry-ish January. Yeah. I'm sure that you see an uptick in people who are seeking treatment this time of year.
Very much so, yes. January and February tend to be our busiest months. So. That
being the case, is it I don't want to say as easy to get people to work on it as they might at another time of the year, or is it just as difficult no matter when?
Well, I mean, again, depends on the individual, but I do think this time of year, everyone's kind of looking for a fresh start. Oh, it's the first of the year, it's a new year, I'm going to try to do something different. Plus, as we all know, that the holidays are stressful, so most people have been overindulging for the last month, right? So it's a good time to kind of detox the body. However, then they realize maybe 1 to 2 weeks in that there's more of an issue than they thought, and they can't really do it on their own.
Yeah.
And that's typically when people start reaching out for help.
Well, we have a number of different agencies, such as the Indiana Armstrong Clarion Drug and Alcohol Commission, that can help. We've got the Open Door here in Indiana County. You've got Sabino Recovery. Where do we learn more about it?
SabinoRecovery.com. Go on our website, take a look. But there's just a plethora of resources anywhere you can go, and I love that you're doing this piece. My biggest passion is eliminating the stigma behind addiction and people realizing they can find new survival strategies with the right tools.
Absolutely. Shara, thanks so much. Have a wonderful weekend and a great New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Bye-bye now.
Bye now. There's Shara Turner with us here this morning on Indiana in the Morning.